Captain Jack Reynolds stood on the bridge of the USS Tenacity, absently rubbing the fresh scar across his jawline while staring at the holographic message floating before him. The transmission, pristine and shimmering in pastel blue, looked comically out of place against the battered interior of his ship. "Let me get this straight," he said to no one in particular. "We save half a solar system from being turned into cosmic dust, and our reward is getting called to the principal's office." Lieutenant Nova Garcia snorted from her tactical station. "Sir, the Galactic Council prefers the term formal inquiry into potential violations of interspecies conduct." "Yeah, because that sounds so much better." Reynolds ran his hand through his salt and pepper hair, flakes of dried alien blood, a vibrant purple, drifting down like macabre confetti. None of the crew had time to clean up properly after the battle with the Kra'zak swarm. 3 days of continuous fighting tended to push personal hygiene down the priority list. The ship's AI, designated ELI Emergency Logical Liaison Intelligence Entity, chimed in. "Captain, according to my analysis of Council protocols, this summons falls under the "oh, crap, what have you done now?" category rather than the "thank you for your service" classification. "Thanks for the clarification, Ellie," Reynolds deadpanned. "Very helpful." "My pleasure, Captain." The AI's cheerful voice contrasted sharply with the grim surroundings. "Should I prepare our defense for accidental genocide or just excessive force?" "Let's go with creative problem solving in the face of extinction," Reynolds replied. He turned to face the view screen, which displayed the vast Galactic Hub, a massive ring-shaped space station that served as the seat of the Galactic Council. Its gleaming silver surface, adorned with lights in every color of the spectrum, was the picture of advanced civilization. And then there was the Tenacity, along with the other 4 ships comprising Earth's expeditionary force. Scorched hulls, exposed wiring, hull breaches patched with emergency sealant, and most notably, covered in splatter patterns of various alien bodily fluids, predominantly the vibrant purple blood of the Kra'zak. "Sir," Communications Officer Dex Tanner called out, "we're receiving docking instructions." The council representative sound, disturbed. "Well, Dex, it's not every day that a fleet of blood-soaked warships arrives at their fancy space country club." Reynolds adjusted his equally stained uniform. "Tell them we're honored by their invitation, and will comply with all docking procedures." "Should I have the crew attempt to clean the exterior?" asked Commander Vega, the XO, who looked as exhausted as Reynolds felt. Reynolds glanced at the ship's chronometer. "With what? Spit and elbow grease. We've got 20 minutes before we dock. Besides," he gestured to the bridge's cracked view screen, which showed their reflection against the backdrop of stars, "I think we've earned our battle scars." "Captain," Ellie interjected, "incoming transmission from Admiral Chen back on Earth." The holographic message was replaced by the stern face of Admiral Helena Chen. Despite being millions of miles away, her presence commanded attention. "Reynolds, I just got word about the council summons." Her expression was a mixture of pride and concern. "Try not to start an interstellar diplomatic incident." "No promises, Admiral, we did just end one." "This is serious, Jack. Humanity's reputation in the galactic community is at stake." Reynolds looked around at his exhausted crew, at the ship that had carried them through hell and back. "With all due respect, Admiral, if the Council has a problem with how we handle threats to innocent lives, then maybe humanity's reputation could use some clarification." Admiral Chen sighed, but there was a hint of a smile. "Just remember you're representing all of us out there." "I'll be on my best behavior," Reynolds promised. "That's what I'm afraid of," Chen replied before cutting the transmission. As the Tenacity approached the docking bay, Reynolds watched through the view screen as other alien vessels gave them a wide berth. Some of the more delicate diplomatic ships actually changed course to avoid coming too close. "Looks like we've already made an impression," Garcia observed. "Then let's not disappoint them," Reynolds said, straightening his blood-stained captain's jacket. "Crew of the Tenacity, prepare for first contact with the Galactic Council, and someone find me a clean handkerchief. I might need to sneeze during the proceedings." The bridge erupted in nervous laughter. They all knew what was at stake, but after facing down the Kra'zak swarm, a species that communicated exclusively through violence, a bunch of bureaucratic aliens with fancy titles, didn't seem all that intimidating. As the docking clamps engaged with a shudder that ran through the ship, Reynolds took one last look at his battered vessel. "Ellie, ship status. Holding together with hope and duct tape, Captain. Life support at 67%, weapons systems offline. Coffee maker still operational, priority alpha maintained." "Then we have everything we need." Reynolds nodded firmly. "Let's go explain to the Galactic Council why humanity showed up to the party with blood on our hands." The docking bay of the Galactic Hub was a marvel of engineering and aesthetics. Perfectly polished floors reflected the soft ambient lighting. Elegant architecture curved overhead in sweeping arcs. Various alien species in immaculate attire moved with practiced grace. And then there was the human delegation, stepping out of their airlock like blood-stained bulls entering a crystal shop. "Is it just me," Reynolds whispered to Garcia as they descended the ramp, "or are they all backing away from us?" "Can't imagine why," she replied, glancing down at her uniform. The deep purple Kra'zak blood had dried to a crusty maroon, giving them the appearance of having participated in a grape-stomping festival gone horribly wrong. A tall willowy alien with luminescent skin approached, visibly trying not to recoil. Its name badge identified it as Thaxil, assistant to the Deputy Undersecretary of Welcoming Affairs. Reynolds had to squint to read the small print beneath third class. "Humans of Earth vessel." Thaxil consulted a translucent tablet. "Tenacity. I have been dispatched to escort you to the council chamber." The alien's nasal slits flared, though perhaps a decontamination procedure would be advisable first. "We've already been through decon," Reynolds replied cheerfully. "This isn't contagious. It's just blood." "If possible," Thaxil paled further, its luminescence dimming noticeably. "Just blood, of course. How quaint. Please follow me, and try not to touch anything." As they walked through the bustling concourse, a wide berth formed around them. Aliens of all descriptions, some with too many limbs, some with too few, some who seemed to be nothing but limbs, stared in undisguised horror. "You'd think they'd never seen the aftermath of battle before," Commander Vega muttered. Reynolds leaned closer to her. "Maybe they haven't." That thought lingered as they were led deeper into the complex. The pristine surroundings began to feel less impressive, and more sheltered. Protected, these species had built themselves a perfect bubble, untouched by the harsher realities of the universe. Ellie's voice piped up from the communicator on Reynolds' wrist. "Captain, I'm analyzing the architectural infrastructure of this facility. It appears designed primarily for aesthetics rather than defensive capabilities. In the event of an attack, this place would fold faster than Lieutenant Tanner at poker night." "Not the time, Ellie," Reynolds hissed, though he had already made the same assessment. They arrived at an enormous set of doors, easily 30 feet tall, inscribed with what appeared to be the unified history of galactic civilization. Notably absent was any depiction of Earth or humans. "The council awaits," Thaxil announced, gesturing at a small, normal-sized door cut into the base of the ornate entrance. "Please, try to be respectful. Wouldn't dream of anything else," Reynolds replied with his most innocent smile, which only seemed to distress their guide further. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater, with 7 elevated podiums arranged in a semicircle. Each podium held a representative of one of the founding species of the Galactic Council. The humans were directed to stand in the center of the floor, like performers in a cosmic circus. "Presenting," announced a disembodied voice, "representatives of the species designate: human, planet of origin, Earth, solar system, Sol, galactic quadrant, Orion spur backwater." "Backwater," Garcia whispered indignantly. "Well, they're not wrong about that part," Reynolds whispered back. "We are technically in the galactic boonies." The central podium held what appeared to be a mass of floating crystalline structures, which shifted and realigned themselves into rough approximation of a face. This, according to the brief files they'd received, was High Counselor Luminex of the crystalline consciousness. "Humans," the voice resonated not through sound but directly into their minds, "you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your actions in the Vermilion system." To the right sat Counselor Genta, a reptilian being with iridescent scales and 4 arms, each holding different diplomatic instruments. "We have received most disturbing reports of violence and bloodshed unprecedented in civilized space." To the left was Counselor Upla, who resembled nothing so much as a giant purple jellyfish suspended in a hovering water tank. "The Council recognizes that your species is newly emerged into interstellar society, but such barbarity cannot be excused by ignorance." Reynolds took a calming breath. Next to him, Garcia subtly adjusted her stance to parade rest. Commander Vega stared straight ahead, maintaining perfect military posture. "With respect, counselors," Reynolds began, "my crew and I await your specific concerns, so that we may address them appropriately." The furthest right podium housed Counselor Darksil, a being of living shadow with glowing eyes that narrowed suspiciously. "You arrive at the heart of galactic civilization in vessels covered in the viscera of another sentient species, and you require specificity regarding our concerns." "I believe in clarity," Reynolds replied evenly. "On Earth we have a saying, assumptions make an ass out of inemption." Silence fell across the chamber. "That doesn't translate properly," Garcia whispered. "I'm aware," Reynolds whispered back. "Just warming them up." A fourth counselor, who appeared to be some sort of plant-based life form with flowering buds that opened and closed as it spoke, leaned forward. Captain Reynolds, is it? I am Counselor Floam of the Arboreal Collective. Perhaps we should be direct. The Council has received reports that your vessels engaged and destroyed an entire Kra'zak exploration fleet in the Vermilion system. Exploration fleet? Commander Vega couldn't contain herself. Is that what they're calling it? Reynolds placed a calming hand on her shoulder. I believe there may be some misunderstanding about what transpired in the Vermilion system, counselors. If I may provide our account of events, the crystalline consciousness shifted forms, crystals realigning into what might have been a nod. Proceed, Captain Reynolds. But be warned that falsehood is easily detected in this chamber. I wouldn't dream of it, Reynolds replied, as Ellie whispered in his ear through his communicator. Actually, Captain, my scans detect no truth verification technology in operation. They're bluffing. Reynolds smiled slightly. Then I'll simply have to rely on that most unusual of diplomatic tools, the unvarnished truth. The Council collectively leaned forward, as if they'd never heard such a concept before. Given the pristine state of their hub and their apparent shock at the sight of actual battle damage, Reynolds was beginning to think perhaps they hadn't. High Counselor Luminex's crystalline structures rearranged into a more severe configuration. Captain Reynolds, the Council has reviewed the sensor logs obtained from the surviving Kra'zak vessel. We find the evidence disturbing. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the Vermilion system, a red giant star with 7 planets and an asteroid belt. The image zoomed in on the 4th planet, a gas giant with swirling storm systems. 3 standard cycles ago, continued Counselor Genta, a Kra'zak scientific expedition entered the Vermilion system to catalog gaseous anomalies in the atmosphere of Vermilion 4. The hologram showed sleek predatory-looking ships with organic curves and protruding spikes, classic Kra'zak design. Reynolds fought the urge to roll his eyes. Upon arrival, Genta continued, they were ambushed by previously undetected vessels. The hologram shifted to show the human ships, appearing from behind Vermilion 4's largest moon. Your vessels? Ambushed? Garcia whispered, her knuckles whitening as she clenched her fists. Reynolds gave her a subtle hand signal to stand down. Counselor Upla's tentacles rippled with agitation. The logs show your vessels engaged without provocation, using weapons banned in 17 sectors, and pursued fleeing ships with what can only be described as bloodlust. The hologram showed the battle, or rather a selective recording of it. The Tenacity firing first, the Kra'zak ships attempting to retreat, the human vessels giving chase, weapons blazing. Upon boarding the damaged Kra'zak ships, Darksoul's shadow form expanded ominously, your crew engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Primitive, brutal, unnecessary. The recording showed human marines storming a Kra'zak vessel, wielding not just standard energy weapons but, to the visible horror of the Council, physical blades and projectile weapons. Is that Lieutenant Commander Ortiz with a fire axe? Vega whispered. Engineering had to cut through their secondary hull, Reynolds whispered back. They adapted. Counselor Floam's flowers closed tightly, apparently in distress. The boarding footage is too graphic to display in full. Suffice it to say, humans, that the Council has never witnessed such carnage since the Scourge Wars 3 millennia ago. Reynolds cleared his throat. Counselors, with respect, may I address these accusations? You may attempt to explain, Luminex conceded, though I cannot imagine what possible justification. Actually, Reynolds interrupted, earning gasps from the spectating aliens. I was wondering if the Council might be interested in seeing the full sensor logs, not just the convenient selections the Kra'zak provided. Silence fell across the chamber. What do you mean, Captain? Asked Genta. Ellie, Reynolds said to his communicator, please transmit our complete sensor logs from the Vermilion incident to the Council display systems. Transmitting now, Captain, Ellie replied cheerfully, including the parts where we definitely weren't the bad guys. The holographic display flickered, then reset to show the Vermilion system again. But this time, the perspective was from the USS Tenacity, approaching the system at sublight speed. 3 cycles ago, Reynolds narrated, Earth received a distress call from an unknown species. They identified themselves as the Melandri, a pre-FTL civilization with a small outpost on Vermilion 4's 3rd moon. The hologram zoomed in to show a small bronze-skinned humanoid with large expressive eyes speaking urgently into a communications device. The translation overlay provided context. Please anyone, the harvesters have returned. They're taking our children again. We cannot survive another culling. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The melandri are bioluminescent, Reynolds continued. Their children produce an enzyme called lumerin during their developmental phase. This enzyme, as it happens, is considered a delicacy by the Kra'zak. The hologram shifted to show the Kra'zak ships, not the scientific vessels they claimed to be, but transport ships equipped with specialized capture pods. They were descending toward the melandri settlement, deploying ground forces. Lieutenant Garcia, Reynolds said, perhaps you could explain what we witnessed next. Garcia stepped forward, her posture rigid with controlled anger. The Kra'zak forces were systematically rounding up melandri children. They had already captured 17 when we arrived. Our scans detected another 53 children, hiding in underground shelters. The hologram showed the brutal efficiency of the Kra'zak troops, 8-limbed predators, moving with terrifying speed, using neural nets to immobilize the young melandri without damaging them. We attempted communication, Garcia continued. Captain Reynolds personally hailed their command vessel. Their response was illuminating. The hologram shifted to show a Kra'zak commander, its mandibles clicking as it spoke. These are our feeding grounds. We have harvested here for generations. Interfere, and we will add your species to our hunting preserves. Councillor Flome's flowers had begun to tremble. This cannot be accurate. I assure you, Councillor. It is, Reynolds said grimly. Ellie, please display our subsequent attempts at negotiation. The hologram showed 7 distinct communication attempts, each met with increasing hostility from the Kra'zak. The final exchange ended with the Kra'zak commander dismissing them. Your meat is not worth our time, leave or die. The young one's essence awaits. Reynolds stepped forward. It was at this point, councillors, that we made a decision. We would not leave the melandri to be harvested. We would not stand by while children were taken for consumption. So yes, we engaged the Kra'zak. Yes, we pursued them when they attempted to flee with their captured prey. And yes, we boarded their vessels, to rescue the melandri children they had already taken. The hologram showed the rescued children, terrified, some injured, but alive, being tended to by human medical personnel. As for the bloodstains, on our ships, Reynolds gestured to his uniform. When you're cutting children out of organic containment pods designed to keep them alive until they can be processed, things get messy. The council chamber had gone deathly quiet. This is the first contact Earth has had with the Galactic Council, Reynolds concluded. We came here expecting to be welcomed as allies who had opposed a clear moral wrong. Instead, we find ourselves accused of barbarity for preventing the consumption of sentient children. He looked each council member in the eye, or whatever passed for eyes in their respective physiologies. So I have to ask, councillors, what kind of civilization have we stumbled into? The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien voices, each member consulting with their aides, and each other in what appeared to be genuine shock. Reynolds stood his ground, arms crossed, a picture of human stubbornness. Councillor Luminex's crystals, fragmented and reformed twice before responding. These allegations are most disturbing, Captain. If true, they would constitute a violation of the non-interference protocols regarding pre-FTL species. By the Kra'zak, Garcia clarified pointedly. Yes, well, Gente's scales shifted colors nervously. There are procedures for filing complaints against member species. Investigations that must be conducted. Evidence must be properly vetted through appropriate channels. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. While children were being eaten, the proper channels exist for a reason, insisted Upla, tentacles gesticulating dramatically. Galactic society functions on order, on process.
Ellie, Reynolds said quietly into his communicator, what was our estimated response time from the melandri distress call to our arrival? Ellie's voice carried clearly across the chamber. 14 hours 17 minutes, Captain. During which time the Kra'zak had already harvested 17 children. And how long, Reynolds asked loudly, addressing the council, would your proper channels have taken to process a complaint, conduct an investigation, and render a decision? The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances. The current backlog for non-member species complaints is, Councillor Flome consulted a datapad, approximately 7 standard months. Commander Vega let out a low whistle, 7 months. That's about 210 days, during which every melandri child would have been in a Kra'zak digestive tract. Your point is noted, Commander, Luminex responded stiffly. However, there are reasons for our methods.
The galaxy is a complex place with many overlapping cultures and traditions. What one species considers an atrocity, another may view as sacred ritual. Reynolds couldn't help himself. He laughed. It wasn't a humorous laugh, but a sharp disbelieving bark that echoed across the chamber. Sacred ritual, he repeated. Are you suggesting we should have respected the Kra'zak's cultural tradition of child consumption? That is not precisely, began Darksel, but Reynolds was on a roll. Because where I come from, we have a sacred human tradition too. It's called not letting children get eaten. It's been practiced for thousands of years, and we're pretty attached to it. Garcia stepped forward. Counselors, I was the tactical officer who coordinated our response. When we realized what was happening, I had three options: withdraw and file a report, engage with non-lethal means, or use decisive force to stop the harvesting immediately. She pulled up a holographic display from her wrist communicator, showing a detailed tactical analysis. Option 1 would have resulted in 100% casualty rate among the Melandry children. Option 2 had an estimated 70% casualty rate, as the Kra'zak would have had time to consume some captives and kill others during a prolonged engagement. The display shifted to show the actual battle plan she had implemented. Option 3, which Captain Reynolds authorized, resulted in an 8% casualty rate among the Melandry children, those who were already too injured to save, and yes, significant Kra'zak casualties. The council members studied the display with varying degrees of comprehension. Military tactics were clearly not their area of expertise. Lieutenant Garcia is being modest, Reynolds added. Her tactical brilliance saved those children, with minimal loss of life on all sides given the circumstances. The Kra'zak had every opportunity to withdraw. They chose not to. Ellie's voice chimed in from Reynolds' communicator. If I may add, Captain, my ethical subroutines have been running continuous analysis on our actions since the incident. While I found 14 minor protocol violations, they were all superseded by Humanitarian Directive 1. The preservation of innocent sentient life takes priority over regulatory compliance. Thank you, Ellie, Reynolds said. Though perhaps next time, mention the protocol violations privately. Noted, Captain. For the record, you also violated the dress code by having alien blood on your uniform, which technically falls under Regulation 7B regarding presentation standards during first contact scenarios. Reynolds pinched the bridge of his nose. Thank you, Ellie. You're welcome. I find your growing exasperation delightful. Counselor Zhen Ta leaned forward. Your artificial intelligence appears to have a personality. That's one way of putting it, Reynolds muttered. I prefer digitally enhanced comedic timing, Ellie replied. Surprisingly, this seemed to intrigue the council. Luminex's crystals reformed into a more inquisitive pattern. Most species restrict their AIs to prevent the development of such characteristics. Humans tried that, Reynolds explained. Turns out AIs with personality make better decisions in complex ethical situations than purely logical systems. Ellie may be a pain in my, Captain, Commander Vega coughed. A challenge sometimes, Reynolds corrected, but I wouldn't trade her decision-making capabilities for any logic-only system in the galaxy. Aw, Captain, Ellie cooed. I'm forwarding this conversation to your performance review. Fascinating, murmured Floam. Though we've strayed from the matter at hand, have we? Reynolds countered. Because I think this gets to the heart of the issue. Humanity doesn't handle ethical dilemmas through detached bureaucracy. We get our hands dirty, sometimes literally. He gestured to his stained uniform. We believe some principles are worth fighting for, worth bleeding for. The protection of children, any children, of any species, happens to be one of them. He stepped closer to the council podiums, ignoring the subtle flinch from several members. You called us barbaric for using physical weapons, for boarding enemy vessels, for pursuing fleeing ships. But what would you call a species that farms sentient children for a culinary enzyme? What would you call a governing body that would process paperwork while those children were being eaten? The chamber fell silent again. I'll tell you what we call it, Garcia said quietly. Complicity. Reynolds nodded. Humanity has a long, messy history filled with war and violence. We're not proud of all of it, but one thing we learned through that bloody history is that there are times when you have to take a stand, even if, especially if, no one else will. Counselor Upla's tentacles had stilled. And you believe this was such a time? I know it was, Reynolds replied. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Luminex's crystals shifted slowly. Captain Reynolds, while your actions may have been morally justified, from a certain perspective, they still represent a concerning disregard for established galactic protocols. The council will need to deliberate on this matter. Deliberate all you want, Reynolds said, stepping back to stand with his crew. But you should know something about humans. We're new to this galactic community. We want to be good neighbors. We want to learn and grow and contribute. But there are lines we won't cross, principles we won't compromise. Not for you, not for anyone. He looked each council member in the eye again. So while you're deliberating, ask yourselves this. Would you rather have humanity as allies, who sometimes break protocol to do what's right, or would you prefer we look the other way, like everyone else seems to do? The council members exchanged glances, something unspoken passing between them. We will consider your perspective, Captain, Luminex finally said. The council will recess for deliberation. Please remain within the Galactic Hub until summoned again. As the humans were escorted from the chamber, Reynolds couldn't help but notice that their guide maintained slightly less distance than before. Progress, he thought. Small but progress nonetheless. The waiting area outside the council chamber made airport terminals on Earth look cozy by comparing. Sterile white surfaces stretched in every direction, with minimalist seating that appeared designed by someone who'd heard of ergonomics but considered it a personal affront. Reynolds stretched his legs out, ignoring the disapproving glances from passing aliens. How long do you think they'll keep us waiting? Commander Vega asked, checking the time display on her communicator. Long enough to make a point about who's in charge, Reynolds replied, but not so long that they risk us wandering off and contaminating their pristine station with our barbaric human ways. Garcia snorted, and our barbaric human bloodstains. Ellie, any updates from the Tenacity? Reynolds asked. All quiet, Captain, the AI responded. The crew is using the downtime for repairs. Chief Engineer Rodriguez says, and I quote, if these fancy aliens have a problem with our appearance, they should lend us a space hose and some cosmic soap. Reynolds chuckled. Tell him. The lights flickered, once, twice, then stabilized. Reynolds sat up straight, suddenly alert. Ellie, status, detecting power fluctuations throughout the Galactic Hub, Ellie reported, her normal playful tone replaced by crisp professionalism. Energy signature analysis suggests, Captain, these match Kra'zak weapons fire. Before Reynolds could respond, a distant explosion shook the floor beneath them. Emergency lighting switched on, bathing everything in an amber glow. Well, Reynolds said, standing up, this just got interesting. Thaxol, their guide from earlier, came rushing into the waiting area, luminescent skin, pulsing rapidly in what appeared to be panic. Humans! The hub is under attack. The council requests your immediate return to the chamber. Requests or demands? Reynolds asked, even as he motioned for his team to follow. Does it matter? Thaxol's voice had risen at least 2 octaves. It might, Reynolds replied, but fell into step behind the frantic alien. As they hurried through the corridors, they passed scenes of increasing chaos. Aliens of various species rushed in all directions, many clearly with no idea where safety might lie. Security forces, if you could call the lightly armed, decorative guards that were overwhelmed, attempting to direct traffic while looking just as terrified as everyone else. Ellie, Reynolds said quietly, get me the Tenacity. Channel open, Captain, Ellie responded. Lieutenant Commander Ortiz, Reynolds called out, status report. The voice of his third-in-command came through clearly. Sir, we've got multiple Kra'zak vessels engaging the hub's outer defenses, and I use the term defenses generously. They're more like pretty light displays than actual barriers. Prep the ship for emergency launch, Reynolds ordered, and notify the other human vessels. Already done, sir, Ortiz replied. But there's something else you should know. The Kra'zak aren't just attacking randomly, they're targeting specific sections of the hub, including the main council chamber. Reynolds exchanged glances with Garcia. How would they know where to hit? Inside information, she suggested. Or maybe they've done this before. Another explosion, closer this time, rocked the corridor. Part of the ceiling collapsed up ahead, blocking their path. Detour, Thaxol squeaked, leading them down a side passage. Ellie, Reynolds said, scan the hub structure. Find us the fastest route to the council chamber, regardless of official pathways. Calculating, Ellie replied. There's a maintenance tunnel 3 meters ahead on your right. It will lead you directly to the rear of the council chambers. Warning, it may be somewhat confined. Define confined, Commander Vega asked suspiciously. By human standards, imagine crawling through your ship's air ventilation system.
Lovely, Vega muttered. This way is not authorized for non-maintenance personnel, Thaxel protested, as Reynolds located the access panel and pried it open. Consider us emergency maintenance, Reynolds replied, gesturing to the distant sounds of destruction. The station appears to be experiencing technical difficulties. Without waiting for a response, he crawled into the tunnel, followed by Garcia and Vega. Thaxel hesitated, then as another explosion shook the hub, scrambled in after them. The maintenance tunnel was indeed confined, a tubular passage barely wide enough for human shoulders, lit by strips of bioluminescent material. They crawled as quickly as possible, guided by Ellie's directions. Captain, Ellie said suddenly, I'm detecting communications between the attacking vessels and someone inside the hub, attempting to decrypt. Any luck identifying the inside contact? Reynolds asked, grunting as he navigated a tight turn.
Working on it. The signal is being routed through multiple systems to obscure its source. They reached the end of the tunnel, facing another access panel. Reynolds pushed it open, and they spilled out into what appeared to be a storage room behind the council chamber, and found themselves face to face with Counselor Darkseal, the shadow being, who was manipulating a communications device. Everyone froze. Well, Reynolds said after a moment, this is awkward. Darkseal's glowing eyes widened, then narrowed. Humans. How inconvenient. The shadow being's form seemed to expand, growing more menacing. Your interference was not part of the plan. Let me guess, Reynolds said slowly, reaching for the small emergency blaster hidden in his boot. You're not a fan of our handling of the Kra'zak. The Kra'zak are valuable trading partners, Darkseal hissed. Their dietary requirements are regrettable but profitable for those wise enough to look the other way. Garcia's expression hardened. You're helping them attack the council. Your own people. The council has grown weak, Darkseal replied. Too concerned with appearances. With process. The Kra'zak offered an alliance. They eliminate the current leadership, install those of us who understand pragmatism, and trade continues uninterrupted. And the Melandry children? Vega asked, disgust evident in her voice. Darkseal's form rippled in what might have been a shrug. An unfortunate necessity. The galaxy is not the idealistic place you humans seem to think it should be. Maybe not, Reynolds said, standing to his full height. But that doesn't mean we can't try to make it better. In one fluid motion, he drew his hidden blaster and fired at the communications device in Darkseal's grasp. The shadow being shrieked as the device exploded in a shower of sparks. Ellie, Reynolds called out, notify all human vessels. The Kra'zak have an insider, Counselor Darkseal. All ships engage and defend the hub. Priority on protecting the main council chamber. Orders transmitted, Captain, Ellie confirmed. The Tenacity acknowledges and is already moving to intercept the largest Kra'zak vessel. Darkseal's form swirled angrily. Fools, do you think you can stand against the Kra'zak? They have hunted across this galaxy for millennia. Yeah, Reynolds replied, leveling his blaster at the traitorous counselor. But they've never hunted humans before. From the main chamber came the sounds of fighting, energy weapons discharge and alien screams. Garcia, Vega, Reynolds ordered. Secure this traitor. I'm going to check on the council. Without waiting for acknowledgement, he moved to the door leading to the main chamber and peered through. The scene was chaos. Kra'zak warriors had breached the chamber and were advancing on the remaining counselor, who were huddled behind their podiums. The decorative security forces were proving utterly ineffective, their ceremonial weapons barely slowing the eight-limbed predators. Reynolds took a deep breath, checked his small blaster's charge, and made a decision that would probably get him court-martialed if they survived this. He kicked open the door and strode into the council chamber, firing with precision at the nearest Kra'zak warrior. 8 legs, he shouted. Remember us, the barbarians who kicked your ass in the Vermilion system. All Kra'zak heads swiveled toward him, mandibles clicking in what he assumed was recognition and rage. That's right, Reynolds continued, backing up slowly to draw them away from the counselor. Humanity's got a message for you. Dinner's cancelled. Captain Reynolds had faced many dangerous situations throughout his career, but intentionally drawing the attention of 6 angry Kra'zak warriors, while armed with only a boot-sized blaster, ranked pretty high on his personal questionable decisions list. The Kra'zak, 8-limbed nightmares with chitinous armor and too many teeth, abandoned their advance on the cowering counselors and turned toward Reynolds with predatory focus. Ellie, Reynolds muttered as he fired another shot, taking down one warrior but barely slowing the others. If I don't make it, tell Admiral Chen I was following protocol to the letter. Technically, Captain, Ellie replied in his ear. Protocol 57B explicitly prohibits engaging hostile forces without proper. It was a joke, Ellie, Oh, humor in the face of likely death. Very human of you. The lead Kra'zak lunged forward with frightening speed. Reynolds dodged, but not quite fast enough. Razor-sharp claws tore through his already ruined uniform sleeve and into the flesh beneath. Captain Garcia appeared in the doorway, firing her own weapon. Her aim was flawless, catching the Kra'zak in what passed for its neck joint. Purple blood, fresh this time, sprayed across Reynolds' chest. Great, he grunted, pressing his hand against his wounded arm. Just got the last stains dried nicely. More weapons fire erupted from behind him as Commander Vega joined the fight. The Kra'zak, now caught in a crossfire, hesitated. That hesitation proved fatal as the doors to the council chamber burst open, revealing a squad of human marines in battle armor, led by Lieutenant Commander Ortiz, who was indeed wielding what appeared to be a modified fire axe alongside his regulation rifle. Rescue party reporting for duty, Captain, Ortiz called out cheerfully. Hope we're not interrupting anything important. The Kra'zak, recognizing they were suddenly outgunned, attempted to retreat. The Marines cut off their escape with practiced efficiency. Surrender is an option, Reynolds called to the Kra'zak. We'd be happy to introduce you to our justice system. The lead Kra'zak warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly. We do not surrender to prey. Have it your way. Reynolds shrugged, then nodded to Ortiz. What followed was a short, brutal demonstration of why humanity, despite its relatively brief time as a spacefaring civilization, had earned its reputation. The Marines moved with coordinated precision, adapting to the Kra'zak's superior speed with tactical positioning and teamwork. Within minutes, the remaining Kra'zak warriors lay dead or disabled on the immaculate council floor. Reynolds turned to the wide-eyed counselors emerging from behind their podiums. Is everyone all right? Luminex's crystalline structure had fractured slightly in several places. Yes. You defended us. That's generally what allies do, Reynolds replied, wincing as a medic approached to treat his arm. But we had just accused you of barbarism, Counselor Zenta said, scales shifting in apparent confusion. And we're in the middle of deciding whether to censure your species, added Floem. Reynolds shrugged his uninjured shoulder. Would you have preferred we let the Kra'zak kill you? Captain, Ali interrupted through his communicator. Tenacity reports all Kra'zak vessels have been disabled or driven off. Minimal damage to human ships, though they've picked up some fresh decorations. More purple stains, Reynolds asked. Affirmative. Chief Engineer Rodriguez says this is getting ridiculous, and requests permission to paint the ship purple and be done with it. Denied, Reynolds laughed, then turned serious. What about Counselor Darksa? Garcia stepped forward. Secure in the storage room under Marine Guard, Captain. Though containing a being made of living shadow is proving challenging. Improvise, Reynolds suggested. It's what we do best. The council chamber doors opened again, and a group of shaken-looking aliens in administrative attire entered, led by Thaxel, who had somehow acquired a makeshift bandage around one of their limbs. The hub's security systems are back under control, Thaxel reported, and we've received reports that the human vessels have successfully repelled all Kra'zak ships. All in a day's work, Reynolds said, then swayed slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. Captain needs to sit down, the medic treating him insisted, guiding him to one of the decorative benches along the chamber wall. As Reynolds settled, he found himself surrounded by the remaining counselors, who regarded him with expressions ranging from confusion to cautious respect. Captain Reynolds, Luminex began, crystals realigning into a more formal configuration. It appears we have misjudged humanity. Not entirely, Reynolds replied honestly. We are capable of violence as you've seen. We do get our hands dirty. Sometimes we break rules when we think they're wrong. And yet, Counselor Upala's tentacles gestured expressively. When betrayed by one of our own, when under attack by those who had manipulated our processes, you and your people fought to protect us without hesitation. Because it was the right thing to do, Reynolds said simply. Shente's multi-limb gesture might have been their species' equivalent of a shrug. Such a straightforward moral calculus. Don't let it fool you, Reynolds smiled. We can be plenty complicated when we want to be. But some things, like not letting children be eaten, or not abandoning allies even when they're being judgmental pains in the captain. Commander Vega coughed. Challenging, Reynolds corrected with a wink. Those things stay simple. Luminex seemed to consider this. The council must reconvene to discuss these developments. The treachery of Counselor Darksa, the Kra'zak alliance, and the role of humanity moving forward. I look forward to hearing your conclusions, Reynolds said, attempting to stand. The medic pushed him firmly back down. You've lost blood, Captain. Stay put. Your vessels, Floem said hesitantly. They are damaged and, quite frankly, distressingly stained. Perhaps while the council deliberates, we could offer repair and cleaning facilities. Reynolds considered this. The repairs would be welcome. As for cleaning, I'd need to consult with my crew. Consult about cleaning your ships. Shente seemed baffled. Those stains, Reynolds explained, represent a promise kept to the Melandry. A reminder of what happened when rules became more important than lives. He paused. But maybe now that the council understands, we could clean up a bit, make ourselves more presentable for galactic society. I believe, Luminex said slowly, that perhaps galactic society needs to adapt to humanity as much as humanity needs to adapt to galactic society. 2 days later, Captain Reynolds stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Hub, watching as the Tenacity and her sister ships prepared for departure. The vessels had been repaired, systems upgraded with technology shared by the grateful council, but Reynolds had insisted on keeping some of the purple stains, not all, but enough to serve as a reminder. Lieutenant Garcia joined him at the viewport. The council's final decision has been transmitted, sir, and, Reynolds asked, humanity has been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with a special designation as, she checked the document on her communicator, intervention specialist for situations requiring decisive action. Reynolds laughed. They made us the galaxy's rapid response team. That's one way of putting it, Garcia agreed. They've also established a formal investigation into all Kra'zak activities, specifically focusing on species protection for pre-FTL civilizations. Better late than never, Reynolds nodded. Ali's voice chimed in from his communicator. Captain, I've analyzed the new council directives. They've essentially created a loophole that allows humanity to intervene in situations like the Vermilion incident, without violating galactic protocols. They legalized our brand of justice, Reynolds mused. More like they recognized that sometimes you need people willing to get their hands dirty, Garcia suggested. Thaxel approached, moving with noticeably more confidence than during their first meeting. The alien's luminescence had taken on a slightly purple tinge, apparently a fashion statement inspired by the human visitors. Captain Reynolds, Thaxel said with what might have been enthusiasm, I've been assigned as the liaison officer for human integration into council affairs. My condolences, Reynolds replied with a smile. Not at all, it's considered quite prestigious now, after your actions during the attack. Well, many species are reassessing their views on humanity, for better or worse. Both, I imagine, Thaxel admitted. Some find your methods disconcerting, others find your clarity refreshing. Reynolds turned back to the viewport, watching as a shuttle carried the last of his crew back to the Tenacity. We're not perfect, Thaxel. Humanity has its share of darkness, but we're trying to be better, to learn from our mistakes, while still maintaining your willingness to act, Thaxel observed. Some things are worth fighting for, Reynolds said. Worth bleeding for, worth staining your ships for. A most peculiar philosophy, Thaxel remarked, but not unkindly. Reynolds smiled. Just wait until you discover human humor. Ali's been dying to share her joke database with you. I have categorized 47,283 jokes by species compatibility. Ali chimed in helpfully. Would you like to hear one suitable for luminescent beings? Perhaps, another time, Thaxel replied cautiously. Reynolds laughed and clapped the alien gently on what he hoped was a shoulder. Welcome to humanity's brand of diplomacy, Thaxel. It's messy, it's direct, and sometimes it leaves stains. But it's honest. As they walked toward the docking bay where his shuttle waited, Reynolds glanced back at the viewport one last time. The blood-stained ships of humanity's fleet stood out against the pristine backdrop of the Galactic Hub, a reminder that sometimes, making a difference meant getting your hands dirty. And humanity was just fine with that.